It is enjoyable if you turn off your brain. Hello. So I'm gonna try something I've never tried before, which is a reading vlog. But I want to do a reading vlog for one book in particular. I just picked it up yesterday at the library. I know I'm a little bit behind on this, but like I said, I picked it up at the library. This book was really popular, I guess, like over the summer, over the spring. I did not buy it because of a lot of reasons, but mostly because I didn't think I would like it. The irresistible urge to fall for your enemy. I'm fully aware that I'm kind of going in this as a hate read. I had no expectation at all of liking this book, but I want to either be wrong or validate my opinions. I love being informed. I love being informed in my opinions. So we're reading this, and I have a couple of goals. One, to see if they're actually enemies. I hate the trend of calling a book enemies to lovers and they're just like kind of mean to each other for like 10 minutes and then they're fucking. Two, I want to see if the fan fiction element is there because it was heavily marketed as being Hermione fan fiction. And I also want to see if, so one, if it's there, and two, if you could read this book not knowing anything about Harry Potter to see if it could stand on its own as a book. And three, have fun. I'm fully open to being wrong about how this book is gonna go. I've read a lot of books, so I kind of have an idea of what I'm gonna like, but I am open to being wrong. Hey, let's get into it. Now I have to think of an intro. Hi guys, welcome to my channel. This is Abigail's Bookshelf, where I will just do book reviews, and it won't be anything more complicated than that. Okay, here's our first check-in. It's the end of the first day of reading this book. It's a library book, so I had to take post-it notes and I had to stick them out of the pages so that I would not forget to take them out. I write insane things and I don't want somebody else reading the book to have to see the insane things that I write. So anyway, I'm about 120 pages in. I just started chapter 8. Overall, I would say it's going basically how I expected it to go. I didn't think I would like it. Let's compliment sandwich. I'm enjoying the narrative voice. I like her writing style, like the way that she puts her sentences together. It reminds me a lot of Susanna Clarke, specifically Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. It's like kind of snarky and funny and has great vocabulary. So I like that part of it. I don't like anything else. Premise of the book, if you're unaware, this guy, Osiric, is an assassin, kind of. And he has some sort of like blockage of his magic that is somehow going to kill him if he doesn't get it fixed. Unclear on exactly how the magical malady works. He gets the help of Ariane, who is a renowned healer and comes from a clan, an order of healers that is somehow mortal enemies with Osiric's clan. And so in exchange for money so that she can help develop a vaccine to prevent children from dying of some kind of pox, she agrees to help try to cure him of this uncurable disease. And you might have noticed I was a little hesitant in some of that, and that's because none of that is fucking explained. She explains fucking nothing, and it's very frustrating. Why do these two groups hate each other? No fucking clue. Why does Ariane automatically feel insane, I wish you were dead, hatred, animosity toward Osiric? No idea. I haven't the fuzziest. the sick children were bombarding the hospitals and then they were gone. He's an assassin. Have not seen him do one assassin thing. And it's frustrating because I think the dialogue is fun. The prose style I think is good. But there just is a complete dearth of logic and character development and plot development and world building that, unfortunately, no matter how funny and witty the banter is, can't bridge that gap for me. I think there have been like 2 half scenes in the whole book that were not these two talking to each other. You could turn this book, you could put it in an AI and have it spit out a screenplay just by pulling out the dialogue, and it would change nothing about the book. It is all dialogue. It's all like grumpy banter. Nothing is explained. Everything is needlessly confusing. I have no idea how the magic works, and so I have no idea how his disease is progressing. He is showing no symptoms at all of having this disease. I don't know why he will die of it. I don't really know how he feels about that, other than he just doesn't seem very keen on dying, which I think is like a normal reaction. It's very frustrating. And to me, all of those flaws, to me, are indicative of this being a fan fiction, because there is no backstory, because it's fan fiction. She expects you to know who Draco and Hermione are and what they're about. There's no world building because she expects you to know how that works. And I think her attempt to disguise its fan fictionness by trying to invent her own world was just like really sloppy and rushed, and it makes no sense. The thing about the Hogwarts houses and like muggles and wizards and Death Eaters and wizards was that it was very black and white, and it was very simple, and so it was extremely easy to understand. And this is just like needlessly complicated. This is supposed to be set in like a fantasy England, but there are like words from like other places that it makes no sense on why those words are being used to describe these things. It's so confusing. You could enjoy this book not caring about that. Like, you could read this book just for the romance, just for the funny dialogue, just for like the witty narrator, and enjoy it. But for me, as like a fantasy reader and a fantasy writer, it really bothers me when there is like no clear care for the fantasy elements, when they're just sort of like a backdrop. So yeah, I can critique something and still enjoy it. So that's kind of where I am at this point. I will say, I think The Enemies to Lovers is one of the better done that I've seen in the genre. I'm on page 120 something, and they have only just had like an eye contact that was like vaguely, I don't want you to die. Despite the fact there has been a lot of like skin to skin touching and a lot a nudity scene, there's been no like, oh, he's so mean, but his eyes are so blue. Oh, he called me a bitch, but his hair is so nice. Like, none of that kind of bullshit. They do hate each other. So I do appreciate that aspect, but again, I don't know why they hate each other so much. But I'll take what I can get. So that's where I am, about page 120 something, chapter 8, onward. I finished the book. Let me just say, I wasn't taking notes about things I liked. So my kind of overall review is that I didn't like it and it wasn't good. Sorry if that was incoherent. The key things behind that for me are, number one, the characters just were completely and totally flat. They had no interiority. They had no compelling backstories. Ariane is like really arrogant and stuck up. And there was no reason ever for her to be like that. And not that I think in real life, like, people need concrete, this is the reason why I am this way kind of thing. But like traditionally in books, like you do need to explain like why these characters are that way. And there was just never any good reason for her to behave like that. It didn't work. The characters were never likable. They never showed any sort of awareness about what they were doing. Still to the end, never really got a concrete reason about why these people shouldn't like each other. The magic system remained confusing. But it was just, to me, a cover for I didn't actually do the work to develop this because it's fan fiction. That's Frank. Everyone say hi, Frank. Franny. And like, I don't need magic to be explained in fantasy. Like, it's magic. I'm not somebody who wants like complicated magic systems. Like, you can just say it's magic and I say okay. But like, she like tried to set it up as if the magic was some sort of like internal organ. I think. I don't know. But if you're like gonna try to make like a complicated magic system, you have to fucking make it make sense. And it did not make sense. Characters were flat, world building was sloppy and confusing and never really explained. Every single character was sarcastic and had kind of the same sense of humor. So any line of dialogue could be delivered by literally anyone in the whole entire world, and I wouldn't know who. And there were so many dick and ball jokes. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube. I'm not monetized, so I can say whatever I want, I guess. There were so many dick and ball jokes. And so many like poop jokes. I felt like her target audience was like a 12-year-old boy. It was so weird. Like, I knew explicit detail about men who appeared on for like 3 minutes in the book. I knew extensive detail about what their business looked like, and it was so fucking weird to me. Like, not even just as a lesbian being like not interested. Like, I feel like this whole book was just a ruse for her to write banter and use dick jokes that she like never got to say in real life. It just is like making me think that people who are way too into Harry Potter have some sort of weird fixation on other people's genitals. Is that what I'm picking up? I don't know. Maybe that's a sweeping generalization. There were moments where she was trying to like write prose and it was so purple, and just like everything that she had going for her was lost by the end because she had just overdone the hell out of it. And my biggest complaint, I'll wrap up this review. Everything else I want to talk about more from like a fan fiction angle, and so that will be in the second part of the video. But on the level of like, this is a book that I read and here's what I think about it in sweeping terms, nothing was resolved. Like nothing. Not a single thing was resolved. And I believe it's supposed to be a duology, which is fine, but usually the way books work, in my amateur experience of reading hundreds of them every single year for my whole life, even if it's a series, there's usually one premise that is solved in the first book. And then the rest, and then the overarching plot can be solved in the rest. So basically we started out in the exact same spot that we finished in. So what was the fucking point? Wasn't really what weren't, it's short-circuiting in my brain. Okay. What was the point? Don't waste your time. Despite the fact that I've actually written out a whole entire script for this book and that I've spent weeks thinking about what I want to say, I think this is going to be one of the hardest videos I've ever had to film because I don't want to be a hater. I don't want to be somebody that comes on here and just talks shit about something that somebody worked really hard on. I am a writer too. I know how hard it is to write. I know the vulnerability that goes into it. I know all of the time that you spent laboring on it. And I don't want to get on this page and talk shit about people's creations because at the end of the day, I would rather have more mediocre art than have perfect art. And I don't think anyone should strive to make perfect art. I don't think I make perfect art. But That said, I am going to be a little bit of a hater on this video. And if you love this book that I'm about to talk about and you don't want to hear me talking shit about it, that's fine. Click away. I'll see you next time. But I feel very much that criticism and talking about why we don't like things is one way that we get better, because I think there is a lot of morality policing on the internet these days, and there is a lot of cancel culture on the internet these days, and I think that makes people afraid to be vulnerable and make art. And I don't want to be a voice that contributes to that fear. However, I do think that being able to talk about why you don't like things and why things are not successful to you is one of the most important ways that you get better as a writer. So, I read this book knowing that I was not going to like it very much. And if you've already watched the beginning of this video with all of my vlogs, you know that I tried. But I think that this book failed in a lot of ways that are very important to talk about. Aside from all of the other controversies regarding this book and its author and her alleged or not alleged stance on trans rights and all of this sort of horribleness of J.K. Rowling, I want to talk about this book as a piece of work and not as a part of this kind of broader conversation. That said, trans rights are humans' rights. J.K. Rowling can eat shit. And if you continually support Harry Potter by giving money to buying the films or buying into this HBO stuff they're doing or purchasing this new audiobook that they're releasing or any of the other new Harry Potter stuff that's been coming out for the past 20 years, you are directly contributing to J.K. Rowling removing the rights of trans people in the UK. And I think that you are allowed to do whatever you want, but you also are not absolved from the consequences of doing those things. And you can't put your head in the sand and say, well, this was important to me as a child, and so I am allowed to like it and to continue to monetarily support it. If you buy anything with Harry Potter's name on it, you are actively funding J.K. Rowling's transphobia and the ruining of lives of hundreds of trans people in the UK. But the focus of this video is going to be more on the fan fiction side, on the sort of implications of publishing fan fiction, not on this writer's stance on trans rights, which, by the way, I couldn't really find much about. Do with that what you will. At this point, you've already seen my blog, so you kind of have an idea of what this book is about if you are still unfamiliar. The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy is a Hermione, that is Draco X Hermione fanfiction that has been polished, kind of, and turned into an original work, kind of. And the premise is that Osric is an assassin and he has some sort of magical disease, and he has to go to Ariane, who is a world famous healer, to get help. They're enemies for some reason. That's kind of all you gotta know. So let's talk about fanfiction. I want to be abundantly clear here. I think fanfiction is so important for writers to be aware of, to utilize, and to practice. I think I would be willing to bargain that 80% of writers who are professional now wrote fan fiction in some capacity in the past. And I think that's awesome, and I think that's great, and I think that's important. However, I don't think it should be published, but we'll get there. Let's start off with what makes fan fiction so great as a sort of foundation for why I think that this scam of publishing fan fiction is unethical and immoral and dangerous. Starting with fan fiction's many, many beautiful, wonderful traits. So, it's a really great place for people to learn to write. It's very hard to become a writer in any other way than just doing it a lot. And fan fiction is a really great place for you to really put some reps in because you're playing in a sandbox of somebody else's design. All of the stuff that may be intimidating to you about writing
stories, especially the fantasy world, is done for you. The world building is set up, the character backstories are set up, the plot has already been developed. So fan fiction is just a place for you to go play with the things that you find compelling about writing. For a lot of fan fiction writers, that's relationships and bringing together two characters who maybe interact little or not at all on the in the original work, and making them talk or fight or kiss. Usually it's kissing, which yay, that's awesome. It's a really good place for you to play with creativity, to write the stuff that you are really interested in, and to get really good at doing those things so that you develop the confidence and the skill to write the other things, and the world building or the character backstory or the character development or whatever it is that makes you a little bit scared about writing. You can learn how to do the other stuff really well, and then it's really easy for you to get into writing original content. Fan fiction is a really important place for representation. Surprising nobody, publishing is very white, and it is also very straight, and it is also very able bodied, and it is also very et cetera, and so forth. So, fan fiction is a place for a lot of minority writers and fans to write in the stuff that was not in the original content, which they are totally allowed to do. That is what makes fan fiction so much fun. You get to put in the representation that you wanted to see that maybe you didn't get to see. It's a really good place for queer people to explore sexuality, to explore gender. It's just a really good place for you to find freaks like you and to interact with that stuff in a really safe and positive way, and to just kind of figure out how you feel about things. And that is really important, especially for young people. On top of that, it also is a really good place to develop community. You can publish your fan fiction on sites and get comments and get feedback. And that is really important for, I would say, finding writing community is one of the most important things for being able to see yourself as a writer and being able to grow as a writer. So that leads into the next piece, which is this aspect of getting feedback and getting critique. Also, a hugely important part of being a writer is knowing how to take feedback. The good, the bad, and the ugly, they're going to tell it to you, and you get to learn what you're going to incorporate, what you're not going to incorporate, what is maybe something that's just mean spirited, and what is something that comes from a place of, I love your work and I want it to be better. And so I'm pointing this thing out to you. You have to learn how to take feedback. You have to learn how to get critique without getting defensive, without getting mad, without getting upset, without bullying them on Goodreads. Not that that's ever happened in this community before. It's a really good way to get feedback and to learn how to take feedback. Again, leading into that is this aspect of engagement. You get to talk back to the people who are writing stuff, and you get to talk back with people who are reading your stuff. And all of that is really important for developing a sense of confidence and to feeling like you're an actual writer, and giving yourself permission to call yourself that, and to be excited about this, dream that you might have and might have harbored for a long time in secret. It's really hard to exist in the world as a creative, especially in this day and age. And so getting that confidence can be completely fundamental and life changing for a young writer. So important. And not only is it important for you to engage with the act of writing and with the space of what an author is, but it also is really important for you to engage with that original content, to be able to critique something that you love and to say, hey, I don't think this was handled quite in the right way. Or what if, this author was more invested in putting in minority characters? What if this author was more invested in adding in queer characters? What are their faults that I can, make up for in my own writing? And I think all of that is so important, to not seeing your favorite thing as a perfect thing, because it's not perfect. Nothing that a human makes is perfect. It's going to have flaws, it's going to have problems. That's part of it. That's fine. That's a really good part of it, because it allows you to also see yourself as somebody who can have flaws and make mistakes. All of that also can help you to develop your own sense of values and belief, and in what do you believe and why do you believe it, and why is this important to you, why is this not important to you. I mean, even in my own experience, I grew up I was 10 toes down. I was a queer ally girl. Nobody was allying harder than me, but I thought of myself as straight because I wasn't actively engaging with that belief. It was something I really believed in and something that I would fight my relatives at the dinner table about, but it wasn't something that I could take into my own life in personhood. And so having spaces where young people any of any age actually can engage with things and to figure out what they believe about things and find the holes in media that they love and figure out what they can do to fill them. That's so important, and that is why fan fiction is so great. I love fan fiction. I think fan fiction is amazing. I wrote my own fan fiction. Not under the pain of death would I tell you what kind of fan fiction I was writing. All of that being said, fan fiction is amazing for learning to write. It is not to be published. In a legal sense, you're not allowed to publish it. In a ethical sense, I don't think you should publish it. In a personal sense, I think you should not want to publish it. And you cannot just kind of shave the VIN numbers off of your fan fiction and then turn around and publish it because you're going to have very serious flaws. And we're going to get into these flaws. One thing that I think was a huge pitfall in this book because it was fan fiction is that there was no story development. I'm going to say that again. There was no story development. Fan fiction relies on the reader being aware of context. The best fan fiction should be completely unintelligible to the uninformed reader. If you are not part of Harry Potter world, you should not be able to read this and understand what the hell is going on because fan fiction allows you to have the shorthand of I mentioned this little thing and you know it and I don't have to do the work of incorporating that into my story, of explaining it, of figuring out how to tell you about these things without info dumping, etc. and so forth. Fan fiction does not have to do that. That's the point. That's actually kind of the point. A original work does. An original work has to explain everything that goes on because it is a new world, it is a new environment. Your reader knows nothing about it, and it is your job as the author to shepherd them through the story, telling them everything they need to know to understand what the hell is going on, what the stakes are, who these people are, what these people believe, why do I care? All of that has to be on the page. This book had no character development at all. And I am not saying that lightly. There was no character development. There was no explanation for why these two people were the way they were. And that's because it relied on you to know who Hermione Granger is and to know why she is this way, to know who Draco Malfoy is and know why he is this way because you are familiar with the canon. This book had no explanations of character at all. They were doing stuff, and I was like, why are they doing that? I, first of all, have not engaged with Harry Potter in several many years, but also, you aren't telling me on the page. I'm coming to this expecting you to tell me what is going on, and you're not doing that. That's automatically 2-star book because it's your job as the author to tell me what is going on, why do I care, and why should I continue to care? Why should I stick around with you through this whole book? This book did not have that. Ariane was a bitch. Why? I'm waiting. Why was she so concerned about looking like she was helping this guy from a different faction? Why do these factions not get along? Why is this guy doing assassin stuff? What does that have to do with like how this world operates? Why does this world need a whole entire guild of assassins? And why are they allowed just to exist like that? There's just no context at all for what is going on. And so that means I don't care if Osric ever gets healed. I don't care if these two people kiss because I don't know anything about them. I think they're both kind of assholes, and that's it. That's crazy. It relied way too much on you filling in the blanks in your head, and that's not how books work. I hate to inform you. It's how fan fiction works, not how published books work. if you live under a rock and you don't know anything about Hermione Granger or Draco Malfoy is a blood supremacist wizard, and Hermione Granger is a muggle born wizard, and he spends 7 years tormenting the shit out of her because she is muggle born for no other reason, bullying her, calling her names, enticing other students to bully her, and just making her life hell just because she's muggle born. And he comes from a line of people who believe that only wizards who are born from wizards should be allowed to be wizards and participate in society as wizards. And she is very smart and she has to work really, really hard to prove herself, and has created this persona of being a know-it-all and being very smart and being, miles ahead of everybody else, so that they never have any reason to tell her she's not allowed to participate in being a wizard, because she's better at being a wizard than most people who were born with from wizard families. So with all of that, then you understand why they're enemies. He calls her slurs all the time. She doesn't like that. That's why we're enemies. He doesn't believe she should exist. That's why we're enemies. But you don't have any of that context. I kept waiting. I was like, well, maybe they knew each other in school and like they no, they don't know each other at all in Irresistible Urge. They do not know each other. They have no history with each other. I can only assume their dislike comes from their guilds. But again, there is no explanation about how those work or why one group would hate the other. Like, it just makes no sense. There is no context at all. That makes it very, very hard to care about anything that's going on. Next up is world building. I think she was trying too hard to make it not Harry Potter. That she added in things that were so complicated and unnecessary that absolutely nothing makes sense. First of all, if you have to open your book with a glossary, you have fucked up. Even if you're writing fantasy, everything that exists in the book should be explained in the book. And it wasn't. And it was not. There was no explanation about how these guilds work, no explanation about how one gets into one over the other, no explanation of like what the politics are behind these guilds. There also was inexplicably the country, it was alternate Great Britain, was divided up into a bunch of kingdoms. For some reason, no explanation about how the government works there. How do the guilds fit into those monarchic governments? Are there people who don't have magic? I don't know. Is there France? I don't know. It was such a disaster. It was such a clusterfuck. And I think that she was trying to like look original. And so she just like threw in way too much and overcomplicated it so that she could avoid being accused of filing off the van of a fan fiction. But here's something else. The reason that Harry Potter's world building works so well is because children can understand it. The reason that millennials into their 30s and 40s are still wearing their house colors is because it's stupidly simple. It's overly simple, in fact. There is a school. They have 4 houses. Smart people go in this house. Brave people go in this house. Evil people go into this house. Everybody else goes into this house. Nice people? I don't know. What are Hufflepuffs even doing? There are people who have magic. There are people who don't have magic. The people who don't have magic do not know that there are people who have magic. It's brain dead simple. And that's why it is so effective. And that's why it works so well, is because she, for all of her other faults, she was smart enough to realize that people like simple this or that. And let's not get into how her politics are still like that. Not her continually oversimplifying a really complex issue, but also avoiding the most simple thing, which is you don't get to tell other people what they do with their bodies. Anyway, so Irresistible Urge just completely fumbled the bag on world building. It made no sense. And when it makes no sense, I don't care. There are no stakes because I don't understand what the consequences are of these things that the characters are doing. There's no There's nothing. There's nothing for me to care about. There's no touchstone for me to be like, oh, they're gonna get in trouble because this is against the rules. None of that. I don't know what the fucking rules are. And at the same time, she also is trying to keep this very like Diagon Alley Hogwarts like pseudo medieval pseudo Victorian atmosphere that the Harry Potter Wizarding World has. But again, it makes no sense. Sometimes there are flames, sometimes there's electricity. Where the fuck are we? What is going on? Like, why, if you have cars, why are we like it? It gives me a fucking headache. It gives me a fucking headache because she just screwed the pooch so bad on the world building. It was a disaster. I was so confused. Reading the glossary in the back didn't help. It didn't help. Bad, bad. Again, relying way too much on the source material and relying too much on readers getting the vibes without having to explain anything. And then she tries to overcorrect by adding in too much. And it's like, do you want this to be fan fiction or not? Like, you have to choose. You can't use it as a marketing ploy to like pull in people and then like throw away everything that makes the fan fiction compelling. Like, it's my blood pressure is so high right now. And on top of that, there was like no magic in this book, almost none. The way she tried to complicate the magic system was so beyond baffling. And the problem with that is that one of the main characters has an issue where his magic doesn't work. But then you go into all of this like confusing pseudo medical jargon about I think the magic is like a nervous system. I don't fucking know. It was so confusing. So how am I supposed to know that he's sick and understand the consequences of him being sick and what's going to happen to him if I don't know how it works? Like on the most fundamental scale, I do not understand how it works. And so that whole plot point of him being ill, I don't I don't care because I don't know what's going on. I don't have the information that I need to understand what's happening. And on top of that, he never showed any symptoms. He occasionally said, "Oh, my hands feel numb." That's it. There was no effect of his illness on the story at all. And that's the premise. Like, what are you doing? It just defies logic. Like, the whole reason they're together is because he has this disease. We never see the effects of the disease. We just vaguely told a few times that he's going to die of it. How? Why? How is this like not affecting how he like interacts with the world? Guess not. It's just a reason for these two to be in a room together and fuss at each other. Like, it's so stupid. And to be clear, if this book had not been marketed as Harry Potter fan fiction, I would not have probably 3/4 of these complaints because I know what you're covering up. And so I'm looking for details that existed in the original that I am aware of. And I'm looking for what you like, what part of that you carried over. And so then I'm having questions, and those questions are not answered because you filed off the bin and unnecessarily complicated shit and just made it a mud puddle. It's a fucking mud puddle. Going back, that's covering our character development and our world building. Two things that work better in fan fiction and that totally were screwed up in this book. Now let's talk about another part of fan fiction that I feel like this book hugely misses. Um in a way that is quite concerning to me. So going back to what I said about how a lot of fan fiction is a way for a fan to critique the original work, whether that's critiquing that a character is not queer that they think should be queer, or that, this character should have a different kind of relationship with this character, or whatever it is. It's a lot of the times it's a form of critique. This thing, this was a gap in the original, and I'm going to fix it by critiquing it. One of the really big ways this comes up, especially in Harry Potter, is when fanfiction writers race bend the Harry Potter characters. So a very popular fanfiction trope is to make Harry Potter Desi, to make him from India or his parents from India, which I think is a really interesting idea, especially because you're dealing with a British centric book. Guess what? There are Indian people in in England. So, and there's a really big history about how that happens. So, that is like one way that a lot of fan fiction writers, and it almost is becoming shorthand. Like, it's almost that every time you read a Harry Potter fan fiction, if Harry's in it, he is of Indian descent. I think that's really cool. I think that's really interesting. Another one is queering characters. So the characters of Remus Lupin and Sirius Black, who were Harry Potter's parents' friends. Huge trope in Harry Potter fan fiction for them to be gay and to be in a relationship with each other, or God help them trying to. So that is a way that Harry Potter fans were critiquing the absence of queer characters and the absence of characters of color that were not racially portrayed. Let's not get into that. It's critique. It's a way for somebody to say, you did this. I love this piece of work. However, I think this should have been the way that this happened. And that is the whole point of fan fiction. That's the whole thing. In the irresistible urge to fall for your enemy, I'm going to give you one guess on if this critiqued any single minute thing from Harry Potter. No, it didn't. Not one single thing. This is particularly glaring to me because you are using one of the most controversial fanfiction pairings. And on top of that, the art of your character on the cover, let me just show you guys. Hermione is brown and Draco is white. This is also a very common trope in fanfiction to make Hermione Granger a person of color as well. She is of ambiguous racial identity in this book. She's brown. That's kind of all we know about her. Just wondering if I need to explain to you guys why it might be problematic to write a love story between a racist and a brown woman. And this book completely removes any sort of blood supremacy that was in Harry Potter around the character of Draco Malfoy. So, like I've said before, in Harry Potter, Draco Malfoy comes from what is essentially a white supremacist, wizard supremacist family. His father and his mother, I believe, everybody in his family is basically a wizard Nazi. And he specifically targets Hermione because she is a muggle born. She's human born, not wizard born. And that's against everything they believe. And so that's problematic, and not to yuck anyone's yum, right? Like, the whole thing that I just said at the beginning of this video about fan fiction was you're allowed to explore things like that, especially taboo subjects, taboo pairings, things that would be considered on the darker side. That's fan fiction is a good place for you to kind of explore those dynamics. You're allowed to write about whatever you want to write about, but it is concerning to me that not only this book, but there were 3 Hermione fan fictions published in the year of our Lord 2025. All 3 of them had Hermione as a brown woman, and all 3 of them had Draco as a white man. So, what's up with that? What are we doing? And you're not going to critique it? And I think I have not read the other 2. I only have very cursory information about those. I will not be reading them. In this book in particular, Hermione is essentially bought by the Draco character. She is kind of required to serve him, essentially, to be his nurse, to help him get better, to fix his medical issue in the exchange of money. And she is beholden to that because he gave her money. I'm not calling anybody anything, but that's weird to me. Is that not weird to you? Like, that's very bizarre to me. And it's even more strange to me that no one, like, I haven't heard anybody comment on that at all. It's weird when you turn her into a woman of color and you just get rid of his white supremacy Nazism. but they're still enemies. It's just weird. It's weird that you did that and you're not commenting on it at all. Because there is no moment in this whole entire book where either of them is asked to confront the systems that they, because again, they have no personal history with each other. That means their dislike of each other is from a systemic root. It's from the fact that they are from different guilds. They are enemies because their families don't like each other, kind of Romeo and Juliet vibes. They're not actually, they're enemies of circumstance. And while Ariane like really doubles down on that, like she locks in on that and like makes it her whole identity in a really weird way. The way that they connect with each other and the way that they become less enemies is on a personal level, and they do not at all critique the systems that have made them enemies in each other's eyes, and that like that whole foundation of their enemyhood is not based on personal dislike or personal experience. It's entirely based on the fact that you're from this group and I'm from this group, and they never one time critique that at all. That's never brought up. And that's weird to me. I think it's a huge flaw in logic. I think it is just evidence of the fact that she just took out some stuff so it couldn't be accused of being fan fiction with the serial numbers filed off. But it is. And everything that she tried to change, I feel like made this worse. And even going back to the source material, I have been calling them wizard Nazis because that's what they are. You have to be a idiot or else an idiot to think that what J.K. Rowling is setting up between wizards and muggles is not a race thing. That is 1,000% a critique on race. And it's not a well done critique, but it is a critique. And she didn't learn her lesson from that. She said, actually, what if I was a racist then? That's neither here nor there. But it was set up to be a critique of that. And a lot of the plot of those books as a series was Harry realizing that that kind of belief system was wrong and fighting against it. And there is none of that in this book. It has no substance at all in that regard. So, girl, what are we doing? What are we doing? This is such a mess. And I feel like crazy talking about it like this, and I feel bad like calling out some, but like something that she clearly like worked hard on and just saying it's like a pile of dog shit, but it is. And I think we should talk about it. So this is me talking about it. I want to kind of close up this section where I'm talking about how this is not an original work, but a very bad attempt to erase fanfiction heritage by commenting on the fact that this book was heavily marketed as Harry Potter fanfiction. That was the word, those were the words put into the Instagram post promoting these books. That was that was exactly the topic of any time these authors were talked to by the media. That was what they talked about. They had no shame in talking about it as being fan fiction. And again, it's like, is it or is it not? It reeks of grifting to me, of like mining this established piece of media for any scrap of attention and just any single coin that could be gotten out of Harry Potter that J.K. Rowling has not milked her by her own two evil witch hands. Like all of this marketing campaign was the fact that it was fan fiction, and then you get in the book and it has like completely removed anything that could give it any sort of credibility as being fan fiction, which again, is it or is it not? Like if it is not, don't market it as if it is. And if it is, that's illegal. So it's like they're trying to do like best of both worlds. And to be clear, I do not think that this is wholly on the part of the author. I do think that the author maybe should have showed some integrity and stood up against it if she thought this was wrong. However, I don't think that she thinks this is wrong. And I am not trying to lead a witch hunt against this person. I don't know her from Adam. I don't give a shit about what she's doing. But to me, it is very morally bankrupt to profit off of this thing that you didn't make and that has been exposed as like actively hurting people. And I don't think the lip service of throwing in, oh, both of these characters are actually bisexual is enough to like show that you are actually a queer ally. I read that at some point the author had the link to a trans charity in her bio, but she never spoke about it at all in any of the media that she did, or at least it was not published. And that, to me, that was your chance, girl. If you actually don't agree with JK Rowling and you actually don't think that what she's doing is okay, and you actually don't think you should be profiting off of her evilness, then say that. But you didn't say that. So I think online there was a very big stink about trans readers, and particularly asking people not to read or promote these books, not to buy them, not to, put them in your Instagram reels, not because it is actively harming the trans community. And a lot of white women bookstagrammers were very, well, it's not supporting her because it's not fan fiction. It's not, I'm allowed to read what I want. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's fine. You're not free from consequences, and the consequences of her, the author, being silent about the active harm that J.K. Rowling is doing, and silent about the way that she's profiting off of this system that J.K. Rowling uses to make active harm against trans people. We know what you are, girl. And if that doesn't bother you on a really deep and human level, I don't know what to tell you, but I think it's evil. And I don't think it's remotely appropriate. I don't think it's ethical. And I would never in my life do something like that. And so it's very hard for me to understand why somebody else would for the sake of a dollar. That's how I feel. That's how I feel. All of this to say, let's talk about publishing fan fiction, why I don't agree with it even further. So, beyond the art side of it, I also don't agree with it at all as a practice in publishing. I think it's extremely dangerous. I think that if publishers think that they can make a single dollar off of anything or anyone, they will. And I think that they will go after these websites where you're allowed to publish fan fiction, and I think they will stop it. I think authors who have far less money and time than J.K. Rowling will be going after fan fiction authors who try to promote their books as being a fan fiction of their original work. And I think it is very dangerous to bring any sort of corporate gaze into a space that is meant to be for minorities and meant to be for people who want to engage for free with art that they love. I think it's profoundly dangerous to even open that door a single crack. And I think it's also morally bankrupt for agents to poach authors off of fan fiction. I think it's morally bankrupt for publishers to promote books as fan fiction. I just don't think it's appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate at all. And to be clear, I don't mean this like if you are talking about a book and you're like, oh, it's like this fan fiction, that's like you're allowed to do what you want. My problem is with the institutions with power doing this as a marketing technique and as a way to make money off of minorities and people who are too poor to publish their own stuff, or people who won't ever get a chance to publish because they're too X, Y, and Z, or people who write stuff that the average reader will think is weird and kinky and uncomfortable and won't like. And I think it's very telling that the kind of stuff that has been published as fan fiction is pretty conservative compared to a lot of the other stuff that you can find out there in the fan fiction world. And it's not unprecedented. Anne Rice is a very popular author who went after fan fiction a lot in her life because she felt like it was infringing on her rights and her creative property, her intellectual property. I think J.K. Rowling could have stopped any of this if she wanted to, but she sees any publicity as good publicity. And so she, of course, would never do that. And I think that should be enough for you to understand that the publishing of these fan fictions is actually supporting her. Because if it wasn't, she would go after them. If she at all felt like it was dangerous to her work, she would not allow it to continue. She has the money and the resources. She would have destroyed them for everything they were worth. So she either, and she is aware of them, of course she's aware of them. So she either didn't find them harmful or she thought that it would bring more people to Harry Potter. So, and here we are still talking about Harry Potter. So it worked for her. And I think that should be a good sign to you on if fanfiction is actually helping the original or not, the original content or not. So do with that what you will. In summation, trans rights are human rights, trans women are women, and if you don't agree, you are in the wrong place. So, peace and love, get the fuck off my page. I urge you not to buy this book. I urge you not to even bother taking it out from the library because it's a piece of shit. But even if it wasn't a piece of shit, there's too many things wrong with it for you to bother wasting your time on this. And finally, I urge anyone who is a fan fiction writer, especially if you're a fan fiction writer of Harry Potter, I urge you to spend your life writing something so beautiful and profound that we as a culture love it so much that it erases Harry Potter from our minds entirely. Let's all live more like Daniel Radcliffe, and let's just forget this ever happened, okay? Stop talking about this book. Stop talking about this evil woman. Need I say more? As a millennial, I'm holding your hand. I'm holding your hand, okay? I'm saying this with so much peace and love. If you are more than 12 years old and you say that Harry Potter is your favorite book, I'm going to assume you have not read a book since you were 12 years old. Grow up, read another book. There are so many better ones out there. I promise you, you'll be okay. Even if you don't have a scarf to wear. Even if the book doesn't tell you which scarf would look best on you based on a personality trait that you may or may not have, you'll be okay. And there will be other good books. Okay? So just read something else. I'm begging you. I'm begging you. Please read something else. You're making us look so bad. You're making all of us look so bad. Okay? Please just read another book. I'm holding your hand. I'm kissing you on your forehead. Please read another fucking book. Grow up. Grow up. Grow up. Sorry if that was incoherent.